The sound that tore through my house at 6 in the morning wasn't human. At least, it didn't sound like anything a person should be able to make. I bolted upright in bed, heart already racing, my late husband's pillow clutched against my chest like it could protect me from whatever was happening downstairs. For a moment, just one confused, terrified moment, I thought maybe I dreamed it. Then Rebecca screamed again. I was 62 years old. I'd buried my husband 2 years ago, sat with my mother as cancer took her, even held my neighbor's hand when she got the call about her son overseas. I thought I'd heard every kind of pain a woman could make. I was wrong. My feet hit the cold floor, and I didn't bother with slippers. The hallway stretched out in front of me, too long, the morning light filtering through the curtains at the end, making everything look hazy and unreal. "Rebecca," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Rebecca, what's wrong?" Another scream. Raw. Desperate. I practically flew down the stairs, gripping the railing so hard my arthritic knuckles burned. My mind was racing through every terrible possibility: fire, intruder, accident. Marcus was still in the shower. I could hear the water running, which meant she was alone, which meant I rounded the corner into the front hallway and froze. Rebecca was on her knees by the front door, surrounded by an explosion of lipsticks, receipts, loose change, pens, everything from her purse scattered across our hardwood floor like someone had detonated a bomb. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely search through the mess. "They're gone," she kept saying, over and over, her voice high and thin. "They're gone, they're gone, they're gone." "What's gone?" I rushed to her side, my knees protesting as I dropped down beside her. "Honey, what are you looking for?" She looked at me, and I swear to God, I've never seen a person look so terrified in my life. Her face was white as paper, eyes wide and glassy, like she was staring at something I couldn't see. "My keys," she whispered. "All of them. Car keys, house keys, the spare set, everything. Someone took them." My blood went cold. "What do you mean someone took them?" "I left them right here." She pointed at the small table by the door where we always kept our keys. "Last night. I know I did. I always put them here. That's when I saw them. The footprints. Muddy, dark, tracked across our polished hardwood floor like some kind of ghost's signature, leading from the front door down the hallway toward... "Oh my God," I breathed. Rebecca followed my gaze and started shaking harder. I locked everything. I checked twice before bed. The doors, the windows, I checked. The water upstairs shut off. Marcus would be down any second. "Stay here," I said, pushing myself to my feet. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. I followed those prints, each step making my heart pound harder until they stopped at Rebecca's bedroom door. The door was open. Just a crack. I'd lived in this house for 3 years now, ever since my husband died, and Marcus insisted I move in with him and Rebecca. I knew every creak, every shadow, every sound it made when the wind blew wrong. And I knew that door had been closed last night when I went to bed. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. The room looked normal at first glance. Bed still made from yesterday morning, Rebecca's reading glasses on the nightstand, that pile of laundry she'd been meaning to fold for 2 days sitting on the chair by the closet. But the window Rebecca had locked, the window I'd watched her check before we all said goodnight, was wide open. The curtains billowed in the morning breeze, and a few dead leaves had blown onto the carpet. And there, on Rebecca's pillow, was a single red rose. I walked toward it like I was in a dream, my feet moving without permission. The rose was perfect, deep crimson, stem still green and fresh. I reached out to touch it. The petals were wet. Not from rain, it hadn't rained in a week. From dew, morning dew, which meant someone had picked this flower within the last hour and placed it here while we slept. "Linda?" Rebecca's voice came from behind me, small and broken. "Is everything?" She saw the rose and stopped breathing. "What the hell is going on?" Marcus's voice boomed from the hallway. He appeared in the doorway, hair still wet from the shower, pulling a t-shirt over his head. I heard screaming, and he stopped when he saw our faces. Someone was in the house, I said quietly, my eyes still fixed on that perfect, terrible rose. Someone was in here while we were sleeping. Rebecca started crying, silent tears streaming down her face, and I watched my son's expression shift from confusion to alarm to something that looked almost like anger. "That's impossible," he said. "The security system was off this morning when I came downstairs," I interrupted. "I checked." The three of us stood there in that bedroom, staring at that rose, and I felt something shift in the air between us. Some invisible line had been crossed. Some safety we'd all taken for granted had been shattered. Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "No!" Rebecca's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist so hard her knuckles turned white. "No police." "Rebecca, someone broke into our house." "I said no." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "Please, Marcus, just trust me. No police." My son looked at his wife like he'd never seen her before. And maybe he hadn't. Because the Rebecca I knew, the calm, collected teacher who made perfect Sunday dinners and always remembered everyone's birthday, wouldn't have grabbed her husband like that. Wouldn't have that wild, hunted look in her eyes. Wouldn't have been hiding something. I walked closer to the rose, and that's when I saw it, a small piece of paper tucked underneath, folded once. My hands shook as I picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. The message was not. "I've been watching you sleep for weeks." I showed Marcus the note, and I watched my son's face drain of color in real time. "That's it," he said, his voice tight and controlled in that way men get when they're trying not to lose it completely. "I'm calling 911 right now." He reached for his phone on the dresser, but Rebecca moved faster than I'd ever seen her move. She lunged across the room and snatched it out of his hand, clutching it against her chest like he'd tried to grab a weapon. "Rebecca, what the hell?" "No police." Her voice came out flat. Dead, like something had switched off inside her. "I mean it, Marcus. No police. Someone broke into our house." Marcus's voice rose, echoing off the bedroom walls. "Someone was in here while we were sleeping, watching you, and you want me to just what? Pretend it didn't happen?" Rebecca started rocking. Just slightly, back and forth on her heels, still holding his phone. "He was here," she whispered. "He was here. He was here. He was here." I felt my stomach drop. "Who was here, honey?" She didn't answer, didn't even look at me, just kept rocking and whispering those three words like a prayer or a curse. Marcus tried to reach for her, to put his hands on her shoulders, but she flinched away so violently she nearly fell. He froze, hands still outstretched, and I saw something break in his eyes. "Don't touch me," Rebecca said, her voice cracking. "Please don't, I can't." "Okay." Marcus dropped his hands immediately, backing up a step. "Okay, I won't touch you, but you need to talk to me. You need to tell me what's going on." "I can't." "You have to." "I can't," she screamed it this time, and the sound hit me like a physical thing. This wasn't my calm, collected daughter-in-law. This was a woman on the edge of something terrible. Marcus ran both hands through his wet hair, water droplets falling onto his shoulders. He looked at me, desperate, like I might have answers he didn't. I didn't. "I'm going to make coffee," I said quietly, because someone needed to do something normal, something that didn't involve screaming or breaking. "Come downstairs when you're ready." Neither of them answered. I left them there and walked down to the kitchen on legs that felt like they might give out any second. My hands shook as I filled the coffee pot, measured out the grounds, pressed the button. The familiar gurgling sound should have been comforting. It wasn't. Through the ceiling, I could hear their voices. Marcus's low and pleading, Rebecca's high and defensive. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I'd been married for 37 years before cancer took my Tom. I knew what a marriage sounded like when it was fracturing. 20 minutes later, Marcus came downstairs alone. He was dressed for work now, button-down shirt, slacks, shoes, but his tie hung loose around his neck like he'd forgotten how to finish it. "Where is she?" I asked, pouring him coffee even though his hands were shaking too badly to hold it steady. "Shower." He slumped into a chair at the kitchen table. She locked the door. We sat in silence for a moment. The clock above the sink ticked. The coffee maker hissed. Outside, I could hear our neighbor's dog barking. Everything normal. Everything wrong. "Mom," Marcus said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's happening?" "I don't know, baby. She won't talk to me. She won't let me call the police. She won't even let me touch her." He looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of when he was 7 and his best friend moved away, lost and confused and hurting. "What am I supposed to do?" I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "Give her time." "Time? Someone broke into our house, left that note, and she's acting like—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "It's like she knows who it is, like she's protecting someone." The thought had crossed my mind too. I didn't want to admit it. "She's terrified," I said instead. "Whatever this is, whoever this is, she's more afraid of them than she is of the break-in itself." Marcus pulled his hand away and stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I have to go to work. I have that meeting with the contractors at 9, and if I cancel again, I'll lose the account." "Marcus, stay with her." He grabbed his keys from the counter, the spare set he kept in the kitchen drawer. "Please, don't leave her alone." "Of course not." He started toward the door, then stopped and turned back. His face looked older somehow, like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. "If anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. I don't care what she says." "I will." He nodded and left. I heard his truck start in the driveway, heard the gravel crunch as he backed out, and then the house fell silent except for the water still running upstairs. I sat at that kitchen table for another 10 minutes, staring at my coffee going cold, trying to make sense of something that didn't make any sense at all. Then I remembered the rose. It was still upstairs in Rebecca's room, lying on her pillow like some kind of sick Valentine. I should throw it away, I thought. Get rid of it before Rebecca came out of the shower and had to see it again. I climbed the stairs slowly, my knees aching with each step. The shower was still running in the bathroom. Through the door, I could hear Rebecca crying those awful, gulping sobs that women only make when they think no one can hear them. I wanted to knock, to say something, to help, but I didn't know how. Instead, I went into her bedroom and walked to the bed. The rose sat there, perfect and terrible, that note still visible underneath it. "I've been watching you sleep for weeks." I picked up the rose carefully, holding it by the stem, and that's when I saw it. Another piece of paper, tucked underneath where the first note had been, folded even smaller. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Different handwriting this time, rushed, desperate, like someone had written it in a hurry. "The keys are just the beginning. You know what I want. You have 48 hours. I stood there holding that second note, and everything I thought I knew about my daughter-in-law crumbled like ash in my hands. You know what I want. Not I want money or I want revenge or even I want you. Just, like Rebecca and whoever wrote this, were sharing some terrible secret, some history that the rest of us weren't allowed to see. The shower shut off upstairs. I shoved both notes into my cardigan pocket and practically ran down the hallway to my bedroom. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I closed my door as quietly as I could and stood there, back pressed against it, trying to catch my breath. This was wrong. This was so wrong. But someone had broken into our house. Someone was threatening my daughter-in-law, and she wouldn't tell us why. I heard Rebecca's bedroom door open, heard her footsteps padding down the hall to the guest room where she kept her clean clothes. I waited until I heard her door close again before I moved. I'd never snooped on Rebecca before, never had a reason to. She was a good wife, a good person, taught 5th grade at the elementary school, and volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. She made my son happy. Or at least, I'd thought she did. Now I wasn't sure I knew her at all. I waited 20 minutes, sitting on my bed, staring at the wall, telling myself I was being paranoid. Telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. Telling myself I should just ask her directly instead of... Her bedroom door opened again. I heard her go downstairs, heard the front door open and close. Through my window, I watched her get into Marcus's car, using his spare keys since hers were gone, and drive away. The moment she turned the corner, I was moving. Her bedroom door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside, feeling like a criminal in my own house. The room was neat, like always. Bed made, books stacked on the nightstand, that basket of laundry still sitting on the chair, unfolded. But now I was looking at it differently, looking for secrets instead of just seeing a room. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. I shouldn't. I knew I shouldn't. I picked it up anyway. It opened immediately, no passcode. That should have made me feel better, like she had nothing to hide. It didn't. I opened her messages first, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone twice. The usual stuff appeared: texts from Marcus about dinner plans, a group chat with her teacher friends, a reminder from her dentist about an appointment. Nothing unusual. I scrolled further back. Last week, 2 weeks ago, a month. Still nothing. Then I saw it at the very bottom of her message list. A contact with no name, just a phone number. The preview showed the last message, sent 3 days ago. I found you. My stomach dropped. I clicked on it. The thread went back months. 6 months at least, maybe longer. Dozens of messages, all from this blocked number, all unanswered by Rebecca. You can't hide forever. I know where you live now. Does your husband know who you really are? That house won't keep you safe. I've been watching you at the school. You look good. Older, but good. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I sat down on the edge of her bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Who was sending these? And why hadn't Rebecca blocked the number? Why hadn't she gone to the police? Does your husband know who you really are? That one kept echoing in my head. Who was Rebecca? I'd known her for 5 years since Marcus brought her home for Christmas and announced they were engaged. She'd been perfect from day one. Sweet, thoughtful. She remembered that I liked my coffee black and always bought the fancy creamer Marcus liked. She called me Mom without me having to ask. But now I was wondering if all of it had been a performance. I scrolled further, my hands steady now, my shock turning into something colder and harder. The messages got worse the further back I went. You stole my life. I'll make you pay for what you did. You think changing your name was enough? Changing her name? I sat there, frozen, that phrase looping in my head like a broken record. Changing your name. The bathroom door downstairs opened, water running in the kitchen sink. She was back. I hadn't heard her come in, hadn't heard the car. I'd been so absorbed in the phone that, looking for something? I jumped so hard, I nearly dropped the phone. Rebecca stood in the doorway, still wearing her coat, keys in her hand. But it wasn't Marcus's spare keys. It was her original set. The ones that had been stolen this morning. Where did you get those? I whispered. She didn't answer. Just stared at me, holding her phone, and something in her expression shifted. The fear from this morning was still there, but now there was something else underneath it. Resignation. Like she'd been waiting for this moment, like she'd always known it would come. Give me the phone, she said quietly. Rebecca, give me the phone, Linda. I stood up, clutching it against my chest. Not until you tell me what's going on. Not until you tell me who's sending you these messages and why someone broke into our house and... It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. My voice cracked. Someone is threatening you. Someone broke in while we were sleeping. You won't let Marcus call the police. And now I find out you've been getting these messages for months, and you never said anything. Because I was trying to protect you. Rebecca's voice rose to match mine. I was trying to protect all of you. From what? She opened her mouth, closed it. Her hands were shaking so badly the keys rattled. From my past, she said finally. From the person I used to be before I became Rebecca. The room tilted sideways. What are you talking about? She walked to the bed and sat down heavily, like her legs had given out. She stared at the floor, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. My name isn't really Rebecca, she said. It used to be Emily, Emily Chen. And the man who broke in last night? She looked up at me with eyes that were hollow and ancient and terrified. He's not a stranger, he's my father. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Your father? But you said your parents died in a car accident. I lied. She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. I've been lying about everything since the day I met Marcus. My name, my past, my family, all of it. Why? She pulled out her phone. I was still holding it, I realized distantly, and scrolled to the very bottom of that threatening message thread. Then she held it up to show me one final message, sent just this morning at 5:47 a.m. 9 minutes before she started screaming. Did you like my gift? The keys are just the beginning. Tell Marcus the truth, or I will. And trust me, sweetheart, when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never testified against me. The sound that tore through my house at 6 in the morning wasn't human. At least, it didn't sound like anything a person should be able to make. I bolted upright in bed, heart already racing, my late husband's pillow clutched against my chest like it could protect me from whatever was happening downstairs. For a moment, just one confused, terrified moment, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it. Then Rebecca screamed again. I was 62 years old. I'd buried my husband 2 years ago, sat with my mother as cancer took her, even held my neighbor's hand when she got the call about her son overseas. I thought I'd heard every kind of pain a woman could make. I was wrong. My feet hit the cold floor, and I didn't bother with slippers. The hallway stretched out in front of me, too long, the morning light filtering through the curtains at the end, making everything look hazy and unreal. "Rebecca," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Rebecca, what's wrong?" Another scream. Raw. Desperate. I practically flew down the stairs, gripping the railing so hard my arthritic knuckles burned. My mind was racing through every terrible possibility: fire, intruder, accident. Marcus was still in the shower. I could hear the water running, which meant she was alone, which meant I rounded the corner into the front hallway and froze. Rebecca was on her knees by the front door, surrounded by an explosion of lipsticks, receipts, loose change, pens, everything from her purse scattered across our hardwood floor like someone had detonated a bomb. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely search through the mess. "They're gone," she kept saying, over and over, her voice high and thin. "They're gone, they're gone, they're gone." "What's gone?" I rushed to her side, my knees protesting as I dropped down beside her. "Honey, what are you looking for?" She looked at me, and I swear to God, I've never seen a person look so terrified in my life. Her face was white as paper, eyes wide and glassy, like she was staring at something I couldn't see. "My keys," she whispered. "All of them. Car keys, house keys, the spare set, everything. Someone took them." My blood went cold. "What do you mean someone took them?" "I left them right here." She pointed at the small table by the door where we always kept our keys. "Last night. I know I did. I always put them here, I always—" That's when I saw them. The footprints. Muddy, dark, tracked across our polished hardwood floor like some kind of ghost's signature, leading from the front door down the hallway toward— "Oh my God," I breathed. Rebecca followed my gaze and started shaking harder. I locked everything. I checked twice before bed. The doors, the windows, I checked. The water upstairs shut off. Marcus would be down any second. "Stay here," I said, pushing myself to my feet. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. I followed those prints, each step making my heart pound harder until they stopped at Rebecca's bedroom door. The door was open. Just a crack. I'd lived in this house for 3 years now, ever since my husband died, and Marcus insisted I move in with him and Rebecca. I knew every creak, every shadow, every sound it made when the wind blew wrong. And I knew that door had been closed last night when I went to bed. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. The room looked normal at first glance. Bed still made from yesterday morning, Rebecca's reading glasses on the nightstand, that pile of laundry she'd been meaning to fold for 2 days sitting on the chair by the closet. But the window Rebecca had locked, the window I'd watched her check before we all said goodnight, was wide open. The curtains billowed in the morning breeze, and a few dead leaves had blown onto the carpet. And there, on Rebecca's pillow, was a single red rose. I walked toward it like I was in a dream, my feet moving without permission. The rose was perfect, deep crimson, stem still green and fresh. I reached out to touch it, The petals were wet. Not from rain, it hadn't rained in a week. From dew, morning dew, which meant someone had picked this flower within the last hour and placed it here while we slept. Linda? Rebecca's voice came from behind me, small and broken. Is everything? She saw the rose and stopped breathing. What the hell is going on? Marcus's voice boomed from the hallway. He appeared in the doorway, hair still wet from the shower, pulling a t-shirt over his head. I heard screaming, and he stopped when he saw our faces. Someone was in the house, I said quietly, my eyes still fixed on that perfect, terrible rose. Someone was in here while we were sleeping. Rebecca started crying, silent tears streaming down her face, and I watched my son's expression shift from confusion to alarm to something that looked almost like anger. That's impossible, he said. The security system was off this morning when I came downstairs, I interrupted. I checked. The three of us stood there in that bedroom, staring at that rose, and I felt something shift in the air between us. Some invisible line had been crossed. Some safety we'd all taken for granted had been shattered. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. No! Rebecca's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist so hard her knuckles turned white. No police. Rebecca, someone broke into our house. I said no. Her voice cracked like breaking glass. Please, Marcus, just trust me. No police. My son looked at his wife like he'd never seen her before. And maybe he hadn't. Because the Rebecca I knew, the calm, collected teacher who made perfect Sunday dinners and always remembered everyone's birthday, wouldn't have grabbed her husband like that. Wouldn't have that wild, hunted look in her eyes. Wouldn't have been hiding something. I walked closer to the rose, and that's when I saw it, a small piece of paper tucked underneath, folded once. My hands shook as I picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. The message was not. I've been watching you sleep for weeks. I showed Marcus the note, and I watched my son's face drain of color in real time. That's it, he said, his voice tight and controlled in that way men get when they're trying not to lose it completely. I'm calling 911 right now. He reached for his phone on the dresser, but Rebecca moved faster than I'd ever seen her move. She lunged across the room and snatched it out of his hand, clutching it against her chest like he'd tried to grab a weapon. Rebecca, what the hell? No police. Her voice came out flat. Dead. Like something had switched off inside her. I mean it, Marcus. No police. Someone broke into our house. Marcus's voice rose, echoing off the bedroom walls. Someone was in here while we were sleeping, watching you, and you want me to just what? Pretend it didn't happen? Rebecca started rocking. Just slightly, back and forth on her heels, still holding his phone. He was here, she whispered. He was here. He was here. He was here. I felt my stomach drop. Who was here, honey? She didn't answer. Didn't even look at me. Just kept rocking and whispering those three words like a prayer or a curse. Marcus tried to reach for her, to put his hands on her shoulders, but she flinched away so violently she nearly fell. He froze, hands still outstretched, and I saw something break in his eyes. Don't touch me, Rebecca said, her voice cracking. Please don't, I can't. Okay. Marcus dropped his hands immediately, backing up a step. Okay, I won't touch you, but you need to talk to me. You need to tell me what's going on. I can't. You have to. I can't, she screamed it this time, and the sound hit me like a physical thing. This wasn't my calm, collected daughter-in-law. This was a woman on the edge of something terrible. Marcus ran both hands through his wet hair, water droplets falling onto his shoulders. He looked at me, desperate, like I might have answers he didn't. I didn't. I'm going to make coffee, I said quietly, because someone needed to do something normal, something that didn't involve screaming or breaking. Come downstairs when you're ready. Neither of them answered. I left them there and walked down to the kitchen on legs that felt like they might give out any second. My hands shook as I filled the coffee pot, measured out the grounds, pressed the button. The familiar gurgling sound should have been comforting. It wasn't. Through the ceiling, I could hear their voices. Marcus's low and pleading, Rebecca's high and defensive. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I'd been married for 37 years before cancer took my Tom. I knew what a marriage sounded like when it was fracturing. 20 minutes later, Marcus came downstairs alone. He was dressed for work now, button-down shirt, slacks, shoes, but his tie hung loose around his neck like he'd forgotten how to finish it. "Where is she?" I asked, pouring him coffee even though his hands were shaking too badly to hold it steady. "Shower." He slumped into a chair at the kitchen table. She locked the door. We sat in silence for a moment. The clock above the sink ticked. The coffee maker hissed. Outside, I could hear our neighbor's dog barking. Everything normal. Everything wrong. "Mom," Marcus said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's happening?" "I don't know, baby. She won't talk to me. She won't let me call the police. She won't even let me touch her." He looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of when he was 7 and his best friend moved away, lost and confused and hurting. "What am I supposed to do?" I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "Give her time." "Time? Someone broke into our house, left that note, and she's acting like—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "It's like she knows who it is, like she's protecting someone." The clock on my dashboard read 2:17 a.m. when Rebecca's taillights turned onto Riverside Drive, and I realized with a cold drop in my stomach that she was heading out of town. I'd never followed anyone before, not like this, not in the dead of night with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I kept 2 car lengths back like I'd seen in movies, my headlights on low, praying she wouldn't notice me. She didn't look back once. We drove through empty streets, past closed storefronts and dark houses where normal people were sleeping in their beds, unaware that their neighbor was chasing her daughter-in-law through the night, like some kind of detective in a bad thriller. Except this wasn't a thriller. This was my life. Rebecca turned onto the highway, and my heart started pounding harder. Where was she going? The duffel bag, the middle of the night, the way she'd looked both ways before leaving. This wasn't someone running an errand. This was someone running. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The streetlights ended, and we were driving through darkness. Nothing but trees on either side of the road and the occasional gas station sign glowing in the distance. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Marcus calling. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. A text this time. "Where are you? Your car's gone." I silenced it and kept driving. Rebecca's blinker came on. She was taking the next exit, a ramp that led to— I squinted at the sign as we passed Cedar Creek Road. I'd never heard of it. The road got narrower, rougher. My car bumped over potholes that Rebecca's sedan seemed to glide over. Trees pressed in close on both sides now, their branches creating a tunnel that blocked out even the moonlight. This was a mistake, I thought suddenly. This was a terrible mistake. I should turn around, go home, apologize to Marcus for overreacting. But I kept driving. Rebecca's brake lights flared red in the darkness. She was slowing down, pulling into something on the left side of the road. I eased off the gas and squinted through my windshield. A motel. But not the kind you'd see advertised on highway billboards. This was the kind of place that existed in the gaps between towns, the kind that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. A single-story building that looked like it had been rotting here since the 1970s, with a flickering neon sign that read VANCY in sickly green letters. One letter had burned out completely. The C was hanging by a wire, swinging slightly in the wind. Rebecca parked at the far end of the lot, away from the few other cars scattered around. I pulled across the street into the parking lot of what looked like an abandoned gas station and cut my engine. Through the darkness, I watched her sit in her car for a long moment, just sitting there, staring at the motel like she was gathering courage. Then she got out, grabbed the duffel bag, and walked straight to room 12. She knocked. 3 times, a pause, then twice more. Some kind of signal. The door opened, and I caught a glimpse of someone inside a man's silhouette against the dim light of the room. Rebecca looked around once, quickly, like she was checking if anyone had followed her. I ducked down in my seat, heart hammering. When I peeked back up, she was stepping into the room. The man reached for her, and Rebecca, my proper, reserved daughter-in-law, fell into his arms like she'd been drowning, and he was air. He held her. Actually held her, one hand in her hair, the other wrapped around her waist, and she was crying into his shoulder. Not the quiet, polite tears I'd seen her cry before. These were the kind of sobs that shook her whole body. The door closed behind them. I sat there in my car, frozen, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. An affair? Was that what this was? All the secrecy, the lies, the midnight escape, was Rebecca just cheating on my son? But no, that didn't fit. The threatening messages, the break-in, the fear in her eyes, you don't act like that over an affair. Unless the affair was with someone dangerous. I pulled out my phone to call Marcus. My thumb hovered over his name. Then I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Someone else was in the parking lot. A figure standing in the shadows near the motel office, partially hidden behind a dumpster. Tall, wearing a dark hoodie pulled up over their head despite the mild night. They weren't moving, weren't doing anything except watching room 12. My blood turned to ice. The figure raised something to their face. A phone. And even from this distance, even in the darkness, I could see the screen light up their features for just a second. Not a face I recognized, but something about the way they stood, the way they held themselves predatory, patient, like they'd been waiting here for exactly this moment. They were taking pictures, photo after photo, the phone clicking silently, capturing Rebecca going into that room, capturing her in that man's arms. I should call the police, I thought distantly. I should call Marcus. I should do something. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as this stranger documented my daughter-in-law's secret meeting with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The figure never moved from the shadows, never stopped taking photos. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. "Mom, please, I'm worried. Just tell me you're okay." I typed back with shaking hands. "I'm fine. Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive. Be home soon." The lie came easily. Too easily. The motel room door opened again, and I ducked down instinctively. When I peeked back up, the man was standing in the doorway, and for the first time, I could see his face in the light spilling out from the room. Young, maybe 30. Dark hair, features that looked similar to Rebecca's. Same nose, same sharp cheekbones. Oh God. Emily and son David had worn wires, gathered evidence, helped the FBI build their case. This wasn't a lover. This was her brother. Rebecca said something to him I couldn't hear, and he nodded, pulled her in for one more hug. When they separated, he handed her something small, a phone, maybe, or a key, and she tucked it into her pocket. Then she turned to leave, and the man grabbed her arm, said something urgent, pointed at her car. Rebecca shook her head. They argued for a moment, their voices rising just enough that I could hear the cadence, if not the words. Finally, she pulled away and walked back to her car alone. The man stood in the doorway watching her go, his expression twisted with something that looked like grief. The door closed. Rebecca got in her car, and the figure in the shadows stepped out into the light. My heart stopped. I knew that face. Not well, but enough. I'd seen it earlier tonight on my laptop screen, in that news article about the fraud case. Robert Chen, Rebecca's father. Older now, thinner, with deep lines carved around his mouth and eyes. But those eyes, cold and calculating even from this distance, were unmistakable. He walked toward Rebecca's car slowly, deliberately, like he was savoring this moment. His phone was still out, still recording. When he was about 10 feet away, he stopped and raised his hand in a wave. A mocking, terrible wave. Rebecca saw him through her windshield. I watched her face go white even in the darkness. Her engine roared to life. She threw the car into reverse, tires squealing, and tore out of that parking lot like the devil himself was chasing her. Maybe he was. Robert Chen stood there for another moment, watching her go, that cruel smile still on his face. Then he turned and looked directly at my car. Directly at me. I stopped breathing. He couldn't see me, I told myself. It was dark. I was across the street. He couldn't possibly. He started walking toward me. My hands fumbled for my keys, dropped them, grabbed them again. The engine turned over with a sound that seemed deafening in the silence. I threw the car into drive and punched the gas, my tires kicking up gravel as I peeled out of that parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I saw Robert Chen standing in the middle of the road, phone still raised, still recording, still smiling. I drove, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I drove until the motel disappeared behind me, until the trees thinned out and the highway opened up, until I could see other headlights and streetlights and signs of civilization. Only then did I let myself think about what I'd just seen. Rebecca and her brother, meeting in secret, her father following them, watching them, documenting everything. The way Robert had looked at me like he'd known I was there all along. Like this was all part of some plan. You have 48 hours. That was yesterday morning, which meant we were down to less than 24 hours now. 24 hours until what? My phone rang. Not Marcus this time, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Then something made me hit the green button. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice that turned my blood to ice, the same voice from the videos I'd watched earlier, from that courtroom footage 8 years ago. You must be the mother-in-law, Robert Chen said pleasantly. Linda, isn't it? I've heard so much about you. How did you get this number? I have all kinds of numbers, Linda. Addresses, too. For instance, I know you live at 847 Maple Street. I know Marcus works at Davidson Construction. I know he leaves for work every morning at 7:30 and gets home around 6. He paused. I know a lot of things. What do you want? To deliver a message. Tell my daughter she has until tomorrow night, 8 p.m. sharp, to bring me what belongs to me. The warehouse on Palmer Street. You know the one. Big red building, can't miss it. What belongs to you? He laughed. It was the worst sound I'd ever heard. She knows, and if she's smart, she'll come alone. No police, no Marcus, no you. Just her and her brother, bringing me what I'm owed. And if she doesn't? Then I send all these lovely photos to Marcus. Show him what his wife's really been up to. The secret meetings, the lies. And then, well, his voice dropped to something dark and terrible. Accidents happen, Linda. Especially to nosy mothers-in-law who don't know when to stay out of other people's business. The line went dead. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not yet. Not when my hands were still shaking from that phone call. Not when Robert Chen's voice was still echoing in my head like a threat that wouldn't fade. Instead, I drove to the only place I could think of, a 24-hour diner on the edge of town where the coffee was terrible and no one asked questions. I sat in a corner booth with my cold cup and my phone and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Tell Marcus? He'd already made it clear he thought I was losing my mind. Show him the photos I didn't take? Play him a recording of a phone call I hadn't thought to save? Go to the police? And say that my daughter-in-law's ex-convict father called me with threats, but I couldn't prove it because I'd been illegally following her and trespassing, and I put my head in my hands and tried not to scream. Rough night? I looked up. The waitress stood there with a coffee pot, her name tag reading Sarah. She was maybe 40, with tired eyes and the kind of face that had seen things. You could say that, I muttered. Refill? I nodded, even though I hadn't touched the first cup. She poured, and something about the simple, normal gesture made my eyes sting with tears I refused to let fall. Thank you. She lingered for a moment, like she wanted to say something else. Then, you're not the first person to sit in that booth looking like their world just ended. Whatever it is, it'll look different in the morning. It always does. What if it doesn't? Then you deal with it anyway. She gave me a small smile. That's what we do, right? We deal with it. She walked away, and I sat there thinking about those words. Deal with it. Like it was simple, like I could just... My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, almost threw the whole phone across the diner. Then I saw the preview. Linda, this is David, Rebecca's brother. We need to talk. My heart stopped. I opened the message with shaking hands. I know you followed Rebecca tonight. I saw your car. Please don't tell Marcus. Meet me tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Corner Coffee on 5th Street. I'll explain everything. Please. She's in danger, and you're the only one who believes her. I stared at that message for a full minute, trying to decide if this was real or another trap. Then I typed back, "How do I know you're really her brother?" The response came immediately. "Because I know you saw the rose. I know about the notes. And I know our father called you tonight after you left the motel. Rebecca told me everything. Please, Linda. 9 a.m. I promise I'll tell you the truth." I closed my eyes, took a breath that felt like broken glass in my lungs. Then I typed, "I'll be there." I didn't sleep. I went home around 4 in the morning, crept into my room like a teenager sneaking in past curfew, and lay on top of my covers staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. At 6:30, I heard Marcus's alarm, heard him shower, heard him moving around, heard the low murmur of voices as he talked to Rebecca in the hallway. I stayed in my room until I heard his truck pull out of the driveway. Then I got up, got dressed, and walked downstairs. Rebecca was in the kitchen making coffee. She turned when she heard me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked terrible, eyes red and swollen, face pale, still wearing the same clothes from last night. "I know you followed me," she said quietly. "I know your father called me," I replied. Her hand froze on the coffee pot. "What did he say?" "That you have until 8 p.m. tonight to bring him what belongs to him. Warehouse on Palmer Street." "Why Nainon?" She closed her eyes. "Shit. What does he want, Rebecca? Or should I call you Emily?" "It doesn't matter what you call me." She poured the coffee with shaking hands. "Both versions of me are going to be dead by tomorrow anyway." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true." She slid a mug across the counter to me. "You want the whole truth, Linda? The real story? Fine, sit down, because it's worse than you think." I sat. She stayed standing, holding her coffee like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "My father didn't just commit fraud," she began. "He destroyed lives, dozens of them. Elderly people who trusted him with their retirement savings, their homes, their futures. One woman killed herself after she lost everything. Another man died of a heart attack when he found out. And my father didn't care. He bought boats and cars and houses with their money and laughed about how stupid they were." Her voice was flat, dead, like she'd told this story so many times it had lost all meaning. "When the FBI came to me and David, we were 19 and 21. They said if we helped them, they could put him away. So we did. We wore wires, we recorded conversations, we testified in court and watched him get dragged away in handcuffs, and he looked at us and said," her voice broke. "He said, 'I'll find you, however long it takes. And when I do, you'll wish you'd never been born.' Jesus, Rebecca. We disappeared after the trial, changed our names, moved across the country, built new lives. David became a teacher. I became Rebecca Hayes. I met Marcus, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. I felt normal." She laughed bitterly. "Stupid, right? You're not stupid." "Yes, I am, because I thought 12 years was enough. I thought he'd forgotten about us, moved on, served his time, and gotten out and just left us alone." She set down her coffee. "But he didn't. He spent every single day in prison planning his revenge. And 3 weeks ago, when they let him out, the first thing he did was hire a private investigator to find us." "The man in the hoodie," I said, "taking pictures." She nodded. "He's been following me for weeks, following David, documenting everywhere we go, everyone we talk to, building a case against us like we built one against him." "A case for what?" "To destroy us." She finally looked at me, and her eyes were hollow. "He doesn't just want revenge, Linda. He wants us to suffer first, to lose everything we love before he takes us. That's why he broke in to prove he could. That's why he took my keys to show me I'm not safe anywhere. And that's why he called you tonight, to show me he'll hurt the people I care about if I don't give him what he wants." Which is everything we have. Her voice dropped to a whisper. David and I have been saving money for 7 years. Every spare dollar, every bonus, every birthday gift, we put it in an account he can't touch. Almost $200,000. Our escape fund in case he ever found us. And now he has. And he wants that money. All of it. Plus interest for what we cost him. My stomach dropped. That video he has, the one from 3 months ago. Was me and David discussing the account? How much we had? Where we kept it? She laughed again, that awful broken sound. He made it look like we were criminals planning something. And if he shows it to Marcus, if he shows it to the police, who do you think they'll believe? The convicted felon or the daughter who testified against him and then ran? I couldn't answer. So tonight, at 8 p.m., David and I are supposed to bring him every cent we've saved, transfer it to an offshore account he's set up. And then he'll leave us alone. She met my eyes. Except we both know he won't. He'll take the money and then come after us anyway, because this was never about money. It's about making us pay. Then don't go, I said desperately. Don't give him anything. We'll go to the police, The police can't help us. Her voice rose, cracking. He hasn't technically done anything illegal yet. Breaking in? We have no proof. The messages? He sent them from burner phones. The threats? It's his word against mine, and I'm the one who lied about my identity and has a secret bank account and meets my brother in shady motels. She pressed her hands to her face. Don't you see? He's been setting this up for years, making sure that when he finally made his move, no one would believe us. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the clock. I'm meeting David this morning, I said finally. At Corner Coffee, he texted me. Rebecca's head snapped up. He what? He said he'd explain everything, that you're in danger and I'm the only one who believes you. Linda. No. I'm going, I said firmly, and you can't stop me. You don't understand what you're getting into. Then help me understand. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Because right now, you and David are planning to hand over $200,000 to a man who wants to kill you. And my son doesn't even know his wife's real name, and I'm the only person in this whole mess who seems to give a damn about keeping this family together. Rebecca stared at me. Then, slowly, she started crying. Not the pretty, silent tears from before. These were the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who'd been holding everything together for too long and finally couldn't anymore. I walked around the counter and pulled her into my arms. We'll figure this out, I whispered into her hair. I promise. We'll figure this out. She clung to me like a drowning woman. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I lied. I'm so sorry I brought this into your family. I'm so... Shh. Stop apologizing and start trusting me. I held her while she cried herself out. This woman who was both my daughter-in-law and a stranger, and I made a choice. I was done being the confused old woman everyone dismissed. Starting now, I was going to war. Corner Coffee at 8:45 a.m. was full of the morning crowd business people, grabbing lattes, students hunched over laptops, mothers with strollers blocking the aisles. I sat at a table in the back and waited. At exactly 9 a.m., David walked in. He looked like Rebecca. Same dark hair, same sharp features, same exhausted eyes. He spotted me immediately and walked over, glancing around nervously before sitting down. Thank you for coming, he said. Start talking. He did. And what he told me over the next 30 minutes made me realize that everything Rebecca had said was true and so much worse than I'd imagined. Our father isn't just after the money, David said, his voice low and urgent. That's what he wants us to think. But I did some digging, called in some favors from people who knew him in prison. He leaned forward. He's been planning this for years, Linda. Not just finding us, destroying us. He has evidence planted that makes it look like Rebecca and I have been running our own fraud scheme. Fake documents, forged signatures, doctored emails, all leading back to us. That's insane. That's genius, David corrected bitterly. Because when he's done, when the FBI comes knocking, we'll be the ones going to prison. Not him. He'll be the wronged father whose criminal children framed him years ago and are finally getting what they deserve. My blood ran cold. Can he really do that? He did it before. That's how he got away with it for so long, by being smart, by being thorough, by always staying one step ahead. David's hands were shaking. Tonight, when we show up with that money, we're not just giving him cash. We're walking into a trap. He'll have cameras, witnesses, evidence that we're trying to pay him off. And then he'll turn it all over to the authorities and watch us burn. Then don't go, I said. If we don't, he'll release the information anyway. And he'll come after Rebecca, after Marcus, after you. David's eyes met mine. He told me this morning he called from a blocked number, that he knows where Marcus works. He knows what time you usually go grocery shopping. He knows everything about all of you. And if we don't show up tonight, he starts eliminating variables. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. What does that mean? It means he'll make it look like an accident, David whispered. A car crash, a break-in gone wrong, a tragic misunderstanding with a weapon. He's done it before, Linda. To people who got in his way. And he'll do it again. I sat there, frozen, as the implications crashed over me. So what do we do? I asked finally. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me something, a text message from a number I didn't recognize. I found someone who can help us, he said. A private investigator who specializes in cases like this. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. She worked with the FBI on the original case against our father. She knows what he's capable of, and she knows how to stop him. How? By giving him exactly what he wants, David said, and documenting every second of it. Sarah Mitchell didn't look like someone who could take down a criminal mastermind. She looked like someone's Aunt Soft around the middle, gray streaks in her brown hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She met us at her office at noon, a small second-floor space above a dry cleaner that smelled like coffee and old paper. But when she shook my hand, her grip was iron, and her eyes were sharp as broken glass. Linda, she said, David's told me about you. Says you're the only family member who's figured out what's really happening. I'm still catching up, I admitted. Then let's get you up to speed. She gestured to 2 chairs across from her desk. David and I sat. Rebecca stood by the door, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her body together. Sarah pulled out a thick manila folder and spread its contents across the desk. Photos, documents, printouts of text messages and emails. Robert Chen, she began, tapping a photo of him from last night at the motel, is a predator. Not the kind that acts on impulse, the kind that plans, the kind that waits. The kind that enjoys the hunt as much as the kill. Comforting, Rebecca muttered from the doorway. Sarah ignored her and continued. When Emily and David testified against him 8 years ago, they destroyed his life, his business, his reputation, his freedom, all gone. And men like Robert don't forgive that. They don't move on. They sit in their cells and they plan exactly how they're going to make the people who wronged them suffer. She pulled out another document, a thick stack of papers covered in dense text. This is everything Robert did while in prison. Every phone call logged, every visitor documented, every letter he sent and received. I pulled these records through an FBI contact who still owes me a favor. She looked at Rebecca. Your father spent 12 years building a network. Other inmates, guards he bribed, people on the outside willing to do jobs for money. By the time he got out 3 weeks ago, he had an entire operation ready to go. To do what? I asked. To frame his children for fraud. Sarah pulled out more papers. Look at this. Bank records showing deposits from Emily and David's accounts to offshore companies. Except these deposits never happened, they're forgeries, but good ones. Email chains discussing illegal investments and money laundering, fake contracts with their signatures. Medical records claiming they have a history of mental illness and pathological lying. David leaned forward, his face pale. I've seen some of this, but not all of it. Because he's been building it slowly, carefully, making sure every piece looks legitimate. Sarah's voice was grim. And tonight, when you show up at that warehouse with $200,000 in cash, he's going to record the entire transaction. You handing him money. you looking nervous and guilty. And then he'll add that recording to this pile of manufactured evidence and take it straight to the FBI. But it's not real, I protested. None of it's real. It doesn't matter. Sarah sat back in her chair. The FBI will have to investigate, and while they're investigating, Robert will make sure certain details leak to the press. Children who testified against father, now accused of same crimes. It's a great story. The media will eat it alive. And by the time Emily and David are cleared, if they're cleared, their lives will be destroyed. Jobs lost, reputations ruined, marriage over. Rebecca made a sound like a wounded animal. So what do we do? I asked desperately. There has to be something. There is. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes intense. We give him exactly what he wants. You go to that warehouse tonight with the money. You let him record everything. And while he's busy congratulating himself, we record him too. What good will that do? David asked. He'll just claim we're the ones manufacturing evidence. Not if we catch him confessing. Sarah pulled out a small black device, no bigger than a button. This is a wire, FBI grade, impossible to detect. Emily wears it tonight, and we get him talking. Get him to admit what he's really planning. Get him to explain the frame job, brag about the forgeries, threaten you with violence. She smiled coldly. Men like Robert can't resist gloating when they think they've won. We use that against him. Rebecca pushed off the door and walked closer. And then what? We take the recording to the FBI? Better. Sarah pulled out one more document, a business card. We take it to the press. Specifically, to investigative journalist named Marcus Webb, who's been digging into wrongful conviction cases for the past 5 years. He'll verify the recording, cross-reference Robert's prison records, and break the story before Robert can spin it his way. Marcus Webb, I repeated, then froze. Wait. Marcus? That's my son's name. Common name, Sarah said. But yes, I know about your son, and I know he doesn't know any of this yet. She looked at Rebecca. You're going to have to tell him. Before tonight. Because when this goes down, when the story breaks and the FBI shows up to rearrest Robert, your husband is going to find out everything anyway. Better it comes from you. Rebecca's face crumbled. He'll leave me. Maybe, Sarah said, not unkindly. Or maybe he'll surprise you. But either way, you can't keep lying to him. Not anymore. Not after tonight. The room fell silent, except for the sound of traffic outside and someone's muffled voice from the dry cleaner below. What if it doesn't work? I asked finally. What if Robert doesn't confess? What if he's too smart to say anything incriminating? Then we go to Plan B, Sarah said. Which is? You don't want to know Plan B. We left Sarah's office with the wire, a detailed plan, and less than 6 hours until the meeting at the warehouse. David went to get the money from the bank. Rebecca went home to wait for Marcus, to figure out how to tell him that his entire marriage was built on lies. And I drove around aimlessly, trying to process everything I'd just learned. My phone rang. Marcus. Mom, where are you? Rebecca said you went out this morning and you've been gone for hours. I'm fine, honey. Just running errands. What errands? Are you okay? I almost told him then. Almost pulled over and said everything your wife's real name is Emily. Her father's trying to frame her for fraud, and tonight we're walking into a trap with a wire and a prayer. But I didn't. I'm fine, I repeated. I'll be home soon. Okay. He paused. Mom, I'm sorry about last night. About saying you were confused. I know you're worried about Rebecca, and I shouldn't have dismissed you like that. Tears stung my eyes. It's okay. It's not. You're my mother, and I should trust your instincts. Another pause. Rebecca told me this morning that she hasn't been honest with me about some things. About her past. She said we need to have a serious conversation when I get home tonight. My heart stopped. She did? Yeah. She sounded scared, Mom. Really scared. Do you know what's going on? I think she needs to be the one to tell you, I said carefully. But Marcus? Whatever she says, whatever you learn tonight, remember that she loves you. Everything she's done has been to protect you. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. Just promise me you'll hear her out. really hear her. I promise. We hung up, and I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot and cried for the first time since this nightmare started. At 6 p.m., I walked into our house to find Marcus and Rebecca sitting at the kitchen table, not touching, not talking, just sitting there, like two strangers forced to share a space. Marcus's face was white. Rebecca's eyes were swollen. "He knows," Rebecca said quietly when she saw me. "Everything?" "Everything." Marcus looked at me, and the betrayal in his eyes was like a knife. "You knew. This whole time, you knew she'd been lying to me, and you didn't say anything. I only found out yesterday. You should have told me." He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You should have told me the second you found those messages, the second you knew her name wasn't really Rebecca, the second you—" His voice broke. "How could you keep this from me?" "Because it wasn't my story to tell," I said, "and because I was trying to protect you." "Protect me? From what? From knowing my wife is a liar?" "From knowing your wife is in danger," I shouted back. "From knowing that her father is trying to destroy her and frame her for crimes she didn't commit, and that tonight we're going to meet him in a warehouse with a wire and hope to God we can get him to confess before he kills." "Someone!" The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked at Rebecca. "Tonight? You're doing this tonight?" "I have to," she whispered. "If I don't, he'll come after you, after your mother, after everyone I care about. Then, I'm going with you." "No." "Yes." Marcus's voice was hard as stone. "I don't care what your plan is. I don't care what some investigator told you to do. You're not walking into a warehouse with a convicted criminal without me. Marcus, if you come, you'll make it worse." "I don't care." He grabbed her shoulders. "Don't you get it? I don't care about the lies. I don't care that you changed your name. I don't even care that you've been keeping secrets for our entire marriage. I care that you're in danger. And I'm not letting you face that alone." Rebecca started crying. "You should leave me. You should walk away from this mess and find someone normal, someone who doesn't come with a psychopath father and a fake identity and—" "Shut up," Marcus said, and pulled her into his arms. "Just shut up. I'm not leaving you. I'm not walking away, and I'm sure as hell not letting you do this without me." I watched them hold each other, and something in my chest loosened for the first time in days. "So what's the plan?" Marcus asked, looking at me over Rebecca's head. I told him everything. The wire, the confession, the journalist. Sarah's promise that if we did this right, Robert would be back in prison before midnight. When I finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "And if we do it wrong?" he asked. "We don't," I said firmly. "We can't." At 7:30 p.m., we piled into Marcus's truck, me, him, Rebecca, and David, who'd arrived 10 minutes earlier with a duffel bag full of cash that made me nauseous just looking at it. Sarah was already at the warehouse, hidden in a surveillance van she'd parked 2 blocks away. The wire was taped to Rebecca's chest, hidden under her shirt. She'd tested it 3 times, and each time Sarah's voice had crackled through our phones, loud and clear. As we drove through the darkening streets toward Palmer Street, no one spoke. I kept thinking about what Sarah had said earlier. Men like Robert can't resist gloating when they think they've won. I prayed she was right. Because if she wasn't, if this plan failed, if Robert was smarter than we thought— The warehouse came into view. A massive red building, abandoned and rotting, with broken windows like missing teeth and graffiti covering every surface. Marcus pulled into the parking lot and cut the engine. "Last chance to back out," David said from the back seat. "We're not backing out," Rebecca said. Her voice was steady now, calm, like she'd used up all her fear and all that was left was determination. We got out of the truck. The night air was cold and smelled like rust and old concrete. The warehouse door was open. Just a crack, just enough to see darkness inside. "He's already here," Marcus whispered. "Of course he is," David muttered. "He's been planning this for years. You think he'd be late?" Rebecca grabbed my hand, squeezed it once. "If something goes wrong—" "Nothing's going wrong," I interrupted. "But if it does, I need you to know thank you, for believing me, for helping me, for being more of a mother to me than—" "Stop!" I squeezed her hand back. Save the speeches for after, when this is over and we're safe and your father is back in a cell where he belongs. She nodded. We walked toward that open door. 4 of us, moving together, about to walk into the darkness where a monster was waiting. Rebecca pulled the door open wider, and a voice called out from inside. Right on time. I always knew you were punctual, Emily. That's one thing you got from me. Robert Chen stepped into the dim light from a single hanging bulb, and he was smiling. That same cold, cruel smile from the motel parking lot. The smile of a man who thought he'd already won. Hello, daughter, he said. Did you bring what belongs to me? Rebecca's hand tightened around the duffel bag, her knuckles white against the black fabric. I brought it, she said, her voice steadier than I expected. All of it. Every cent we saved. Robert stepped further into the light, and I got my first real look at him up close. Prison had made him thinner, harder, like something had been burned away, leaving only the essential cruelty. His gray hair was cropped short, his clothes were cheap but clean, and those eyes, God, those eyes were like looking into an empty well. 200,000, he said, not asking, just confirming. Plus the interest you owe me for the 12 years I lost because of your betrayal. We don't owe you anything, David said from beside me, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You stole from innocent people. You destroyed lives. We did the right thing. The right thing? Robert laughed, and the sound echoed off the warehouse walls like breaking glass. The right thing would have been loyalty, family. But instead, you wore wires and smiled for the FBI and put your own father in a cage. He took another step closer. Do you know what they do to financial criminals in prison? Do you have any idea what I endured because of you? Good, Rebecca spat. I hope every second was torture. His smile widened. There's that fire. There's my daughter. For a moment I thought Rebecca Hayes had made you soft, but no, you're still Emily Chen underneath. Still my blood. I'm nothing like you. Keep telling yourself that. He gestured to the duffel bag. Now, let's see what you brought me. Rebecca hesitated, and I saw her throat move as she swallowed hard. The wire was recording everything. We just needed him to keep talking, to confess, to give us something we could use. First, Rebecca said, I want guarantees. I want you to swear that once you have this money, you'll leave us alone. Leave Marcus alone. Leave Linda alone. You take this and disappear, and we never see you again. Robert tilted his head, studying her like she was an interesting insect. And why would I agree to that? Because if you don't, I'll go to the FBI. I'll tell them everything about the threats, the break-in, the messages. Will you? He pulled out his phone. Because I have something I'd like to show you first. Something I think will change your mind about making threats. My stomach dropped. He tapped his phone screen a few times, then turned it to face us. A video began to play. It showed Rebecca and David 3 months ago in a parking garage. The footage was grainy, shot from a distance, but the audio was crystal clear. We have almost 200,000 now, David's voice said through the phone speaker. How much more do we need? At least another 100, Rebecca replied. Maybe more. Enough to disappear completely if we have to. And you're sure Marcus doesn't know? He can't know. If he finds out what we're really doing with this money, if he knows we've been lying. The video cut off. Interesting conversation, Robert said pleasantly. Sounds like conspiracy to commit fraud, doesn't it? Wife hides large sums of money from husband, lies about her identity, meets brother in secret to discuss illegal activities. He pocketed his phone. I have 3 more videos just like this one. Different angles, different conversations, all of them making you look guilty as sin. That's not what we were doing, David protested. We were saving that money to escape from you. Prove it. Robert's smile was vicious. Go ahead. Explain to a jury why you needed an escape fund. Explain why you changed your name and lied to your husband for 5 years. Explain why you meet your brother in shady motels and parking garages like criminals planning a heist. He paused. Oh wait, you can't. Because it looks exactly like what I say. It is the children of a convicted fraudster following in Daddy's footsteps. Marcus stepped forward, his voice tight with fury. You're the criminal here. You're the one who's been stalking and threatening. Prove that too, Robert interrupted. I've been very careful, Marcus. No fingerprints in your house, no traceable messages. No evidence that I've done anything except try to reconnect with my estranged children. He looked at Rebecca. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that money. All of it. And then you're going to give me another 100,000 within the next month. We don't have another 100,000. Then get it. Sell your house. Max out credit cards. I don't care how you do it. His voice turned cold. And if you don't, if you go to the police or the FBI or anyone else, I release these videos. I send them to the authorities along with all the other evidence I've compiled over the past 12 years. And I watch you both go to prison while I walk away free. The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. You're a monster, Rebecca whispered. I'm a survivor, Robert corrected. I'm someone who understands that in this world you either destroy or be destroyed, and I'll be damned if I let my own children destroy me twice. This was it. This was the moment Sarah had told us to push for. Why are you really doing this? I asked, surprising everyone, including myself. It's not about the money. It can't be. You've spent 12 years planning this, building this elaborate frame job. There has to be more to it than just cash. Robert's eyes shifted to me, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Smart woman, he said. Marcus, your mother is smarter than you give her credit for. He walked closer to me, and Marcus moved to block him, but I put a hand on my son's chest. Let him answer, I said. Robert stopped a few feet away. You're right. It's not about the money. The money is just a bonus. A small compensation for what they took from me. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. What I really want is to watch them suffer. To watch them lose everything they love, their freedom, their reputation, their relationships the same way I did. I want them to know what it feels like to be caged, to be helpless, to watch their lives burn down around them while everyone they trusted turns their back. That's sick, Marcus said. That's justice, Robert countered. They testified against me. They chose the FBI over their own blood, so now they get to live with the consequences. He looked at Rebecca. You thought you could build a nice life with a new name and a husband who doesn't know the real you? You thought you could just erase Emily Chen and become someone else? Well, surprise, sweetheart. The past always catches up, and mine is about to destroy yours. Rebecca was trembling now, tears streaming down her face. I hate you. I hate you so much. Good. Robert's smile was terrible. Hold on to that hate. You're going to need it where you're going. He pulled out his phone again. Now, I'm going to send you wire transfer instructions. You're going to transfer that 200,000 to the account I specify. And then you're going to go home and figure out how to get me the rest within 30 days. Are we clear? And if we refuse? David asked. Robert tapped his phone screen. Then I hit send on this email I've already drafted to the FBI, complete with all the videos, all the forged documents, all the manufactured evidence showing that Emily Chen and David Chen have been running their own fraud operation for the past 5 years. He looked up. Your choice, but choose fast. I'm not a patient man anymore. Rebecca looked at David. David looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at me. And I thought about the wire hidden under Rebecca's shirt, recording every word Robert had just said. The confession, the threats, the admission that the evidence was manufactured. We had him. Okay, Rebecca said finally, her voice breaking. Okay, we'll do it. Just promise this ends tonight. Promise that once you have the money, this is over. Oh, sweetheart. Robert's laugh was like nails on a chalkboard. This is never going to be over. Not until I've taken everything from you. Not until you understand what you did to me. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. You're going to pay me $300,000 total. And then you're going to check in with me every single month to make sure you're still being good little children. And if you ever try to run, if you ever try to tell anyone about this, if you ever do anything except exactly what I say, I destroy you. Completely. Do you understand? Rebecca nodded, her whole body shaking. Say it, Robert demanded. Say you understand. I understand, she whispered. Good girl. He pulled out a USB drive from his pocket and held it up. Before we do the transfer, I want you to watch something. A little insurance policy, you could call it. Something to remind you what happens when people cross me. What is it? David asked. You'll see. Robert walked to the corner of the warehouse where an old laptop sat on a crate. He plugged in the USB drive and gestured for us to come closer. Watch, all of you. We moved closer, reluctantly, our feet dragging like we were walking to an execution. The screen flickered to life. And what I saw made my blood turn to ice. It was footage from inside our house, our living room, our kitchen, Rebecca's bedroom. You've been watching us, Marcus said, his voice hollow with horror. You put cameras in our house. Just being thorough, Robert said casually. I like to know what my investments are up to, and you've all been very entertaining. He fast-forwarded through the footage. Here's Marcus leaving for work every morning at 7:30. Here's Linda making coffee and reading her newspaper at the kitchen table. Here's Rebecca grading papers in the bedroom. Oh, and here's a good one. He stopped on a frame that showed Marcus and Rebecca in their bedroom, having what looked like an intimate moment. Turn it off, Marcus growled. In a minute. Robert kept playing the video. See, this is what I want you to understand. I don't just have videos of your secret meetings and suspicious money transfers. I have videos of everything. Every moment of your lives for the past 3 weeks, every conversation, every argument, every private moment you thought was safe. He turned to face us, and his expression was pure malice. So, when I tell you that you're going to do exactly what I say, when I tell you that you're going to pay me and obey me and never cross me again, this is why. Because I own you now. I own your privacy, your secrets, your lives. And if you don't cooperate, I don't just release the fraud evidence. I release everything. Every embarrassing moment, every private conversation, every single thing you'd never want the world to see. Rebecca collapsed. Actually collapsed. Her legs giving out, Marcus barely catching her before she hit the concrete floor. You're insane, David said. No. Robert ejected the USB drive and pocketed it. I'm prepared. There's a difference. He looked at Rebecca, who was sobbing in Marcus's arms. Now, let's do that money transfer, shall we? Unless you'd like me to start uploading videos to the internet right now. That's when I heard it. A sound so faint I almost missed it. Police sirens. Still distant, but getting closer. Robert heard them too. His head snapped up, his expression shifting from smug satisfaction to cold fury in an instant. What did you do? He asked quietly. Nothing, Rebecca said, but her voice was too shaky, too obviously lying. Robert pulled out his phone and started typing frantically. Then he looked at Rebecca, and I saw murder in his eyes. You're wearing a wire. Chapter word count, 2089. Chapter 9, The Warehouse. Everything happened at once. Robert lunged for Rebecca, his hand reaching for her shirt where the wire was hidden, and Marcus threw himself between them with a roar that didn't sound human. They collided hard, both men going down in a tangle of limbs and fury. Marcus's fist connected with Robert's jaw with a sound like a firecracker, and Robert rolled, faster than a man his age should move, and suddenly there was something in his hand. He's got a knife, David screamed. I grabbed Rebecca and pulled her backward, both of us stumbling over debris and broken concrete. The sirens were getting louder now, maybe 2 blocks away, maybe less. You stupid girl, Robert snarled, blood dripping from his split lip. He had Marcus pinned somehow, one arm twisted at a terrible angle, the blade pressed against my son's throat. Did you really think you could outsmart me? Did you really think I wouldn't plan for this? Let him go, Rebecca begged, her voice raw. Please, I'll do anything. Just let him go. Anything? Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it now, just rage and something that looked horribly like grief. It's too late for anything. The second you put on that wire, the second you brought the police into this, you sealed all our fates. The blade pressed harder. Marcus made a strangled sound. Dad, stop. David rushed forward. This isn't the plan. This isn't what you… Plan? Robert's eyes were wild now, all pretense of control gone. There is no plan anymore. They've ruined everything, just like they ruined everything 12 years ago. He looked at Rebecca, and tears were streaming down his face, actual tears. I gave you everything. I gave you a home, an education, a future, and you repaid me by destroying me, by choosing strangers over your own father. You destroyed yourself, Rebecca said, her voice shaking but fierce. You stole from people who trusted you. You laughed about it. You didn't care who you hurt. I cared about you. Robert's scream echoed off the warehouse walls. Everything I did was for you and David. The money was for your college funds, your futures, The money was for boats and cars and houses. David interrupted. The money was for you. It was always for you. We were just props in your life, accessories to make you look like a good father while you destroyed people. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed through the broken windows, painting the warehouse walls in violent colors. FBI, come out with your hands up. Robert's grip on Marcus tightened. The knife drew a thin line of blood. No, he said softly. No, I don't think I will. I did something then that I'd never done in my 62 years of life. I'd never been a violent woman, never raised a hand to anyone, never even killed a spider if I could help it. But I saw that blade against my son's throat, saw the blood, saw the madness in Robert Chen's eyes. And I picked up a piece of broken concrete and smashed it against the back of his skull as hard as I could. Robert's eyes went wide. The knife clattered to the floor. He toppled sideways, and Marcus scrambled away, gasping, hand pressed to the thin cut on his throat. Robert lay there on the ground, dazed but still conscious, blood matting his gray hair. He looked up at me with something like surprise. You hit me, he said, his voice slurred. The mother-in-law hit me. Damn right I did, I said, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the concrete. And I'll do it again if you come near my family. The warehouse door burst open. Flashlights blazed into the darkness. Voices shouted commands I couldn't quite process through the ringing in my ears. FBI, nobody move, hands where we can see them. Sarah Mitchell pushed through the crowd of agents, her face grim but triumphant. She went straight to Rebecca. Did you get it all? She asked. Rebecca nodded, pulling the wire from under her shirt with shaking hands. Everything, every word. Good girl. Sarah turned to the agents. Robert Chen, wanted for parole violation, stalking, breaking and entering, extortion, and attempted murder. She looked down at Robert, who was being handcuffed by two large men in FBI vests. Also, we'll be adding evidence, tampering, and fraud to that list once we review all the forged documents he created. Robert was laughing now, a broken, terrible sound. It doesn't matter. I still have the videos. I still have everything. The minute I don't check in with my contacts, all of it gets released. No, it doesn't. Sarah pulled out her own phone and showed him the screen. While you were busy monologuing like a movie villain, my team was executing a warrant on your apartment. We found your computers, your backup drives, your cloud storage accounts, all of it. And we've already started deleting every illegal video you took of this family. The laughter stopped. You're lying. I'm really not. Sarah's smile was cold. You're good, Robert. You're thorough. But you're not the only one who knows how to plan ahead. The second Emily reached out to me 3 days ago, I started building a case, getting warrants, coordinating with the FBI. You never stood a chance. 3 days? Robert looked at Rebecca, confusion and betrayal warring on his face. But you seemed so scared, so broken. I'm a teacher, Rebecca said quietly. I know how to act. I know how to make people believe what I want them to believe. She crouched down next to him, and I saw something in her expression I'd never seen before, pity mixed with finality. You taught me that, actually. You taught me that the best cons are the ones where the mark never sees it coming. Robert stared at her. Then he started laughing again, harder this time, until he was choking on it. She played me, he said to no one in particular. My own daughter played me. No, Rebecca said, standing up. I survived you. There's a difference. The FBI agents hauled Robert to his feet and started dragging him toward the door. He fought them every step, screaming about evidence and lawyers and injustice, his voice getting smaller and smaller until the warehouse doors closed and there was nothing left but silence. Marcus stumbled to Rebecca and pulled her into his arms so hard I heard the air rush out of her lungs. She clung to him, both of them shaking, both of them crying. David collapsed against a wall and slid down to sit on the floor, his head in his hands. And I stood there in the middle of that warehouse, covered in dust and Robert Chen's blood, and felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't even known was tight. It was over. Sarah drove us home in her van, while FBI agents processed the warehouse and took our statements and documented everything. He'll go back to prison, she said as we pulled into our driveway. Parole violation alone is enough for 5 more years, and with the new charges attempted murder, extortion, stalking, he's looking at 20 to life. He'll never get out again. Good, Marcus said hoarsely. His throat was bandaged now, the cut shallow but angry looking. The forged evidence against Emily and David has been flagged in the system. Sarah continued. If anyone tries to use it, it'll be immediately identified as fabricated. Your names are clear. What about the videos? Rebecca asked quietly. The ones from our house? Deleted. All of them. We'll do a full security sweep tomorrow to make sure he didn't leave any cameras behind, but we got everything from his apartment. Sarah looked at her in the rearview mirror. I promise. He can't hurt you anymore. Rebecca nodded, but didn't say anything. We sat in the driveway for a long moment after Sarah left, none of us quite ready to go inside. I need to know something, Marcus said finally, his voice rough. Was any of it real? Our marriage, our life together, was any of it actually real, or was it all just you hiding? Rebecca turned to look at him, and the devastation on her face was answer enough. It was real, she whispered. Every moment with you was the most real thing in my life. I lied about my name, about my past, about my father, but I never lied about loving you. That was always true. Then why didn't you tell me? His voice cracked. Why didn't you trust me with this? Because I was afraid you'd look at me differently. That you'd see Emily Chen, the girl whose father stole millions and destroyed lives, instead of Rebecca Hayes, the teacher who volunteers at animal shelters and makes terrible casseroles. She touched his face gently. I wanted to be normal so badly. I wanted to be someone who didn't have a criminal for a father and trauma in her past and a brother she had to meet in secret motels. I wanted to just be your wife. You are my wife, Marcus said. Rebecca, Emily, whoever you are, you're my wife. And yeah, I'm pissed that you lied. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me. But I'm not leaving you. I'm not walking away from this marriage because your past is complicated. You should, she said. You deserve better than someone with all this baggage. I deserve to make my own choices about what I can handle, Marcus interrupted. And I choose you. I choose us. Even if that means I have to learn who you really are all over again. They kissed then, desperate and messy and real, and I looked away to give them privacy. David was still sitting in the back seat, staring at nothing. You okay? I asked him. I don't know, he said honestly. I spent 12 years waiting for this moment, for him to come back, for everything to fall apart. And now that it's over, now that he's gone, I don't know what to do with myself. You heal, I said. You take time, and you heal. That easy, huh? I didn't say it was easy. I said that's what you do. I turned to face him. You helped save your sister tonight. You stood up to your father. You did the hardest thing a person can do. You chose what was right over what was easy. That takes courage. I was terrified the whole time, he admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear, I said. It's being terrified and doing it anyway. He smiled, small and sad but real. My sister's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her, I corrected. Both of you. We finally went inside. Marcus and Rebecca disappeared upstairs to talk more, or maybe just to hold each other and process everything that had happened. David said he needed to drive, to clear his head, and I didn't try to stop him. which left me alone in the kitchen at midnight, making tea I didn't really want, trying to understand how my life had turned into an action movie in the span of 3 days. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Got confirmation. Robert's been formally charged and denied bail. He's not going anywhere. I texted back, "Thank you for everything. Thank you. You hit him with a rock. That was the most badass thing I've seen in 20 years of investigations." I smiled, despite myself. Another text came through, this one from Marcus. "Mom, thank you for believing Rebecca when I didn't. Thank you for not giving up. I love you." The tears I'd been holding back finally came. I sat at that kitchen table and cried for Rebecca and her lost childhood, for David and his years of running, for Marcus and his shattered trust, for myself and the violence I'd been capable of when my family was threatened. But mostly, I cried from relief. Because we were safe, we were together, and we were going to be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, wearing one of Marcus's old t-shirts, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Can you?" "Not really." She walked to the table and sat across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other, this woman who'd been my daughter-in-law for 5 years and a stranger for 3 days, and now something new entirely. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for lying to you, for putting you in danger, for—" "Stop apologizing," I interrupted gently. "You did what you had to do to survive. I understand that now. Do you forgive me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Ask me again in a few weeks," I said honestly. "Right now I'm still processing, still trying to fit Emily Chen and Rebecca Hayes into the same person in my head. But I think I will forgive you, because you're family, and family forgives." She started crying, and I reached across the table to take her hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving Marcus tonight, for hitting my father with that rock, for being the bravest person I've ever met." "I'm not brave," I said. "I'm just a mother who wasn't going to let anyone hurt her son." "That's what makes you brave." We sat there holding hands across the kitchen table, 2 women who'd been strangers and enemies and allies, all in the span of 72 hours. "What happens now?" Rebecca asked. "Now?" I squeezed her hand. "Now we heal, we rebuild. We figure out how to be a family again, a real family, built on truth instead of secrets." "That sounds nice," she said. "It will be," I promised. "It won't be easy, but it will be nice." She smiled, small and fragile but genuine, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I believed we actually had a chance. Upstairs, I heard Marcus moving around, the house settling, the clock ticking. Normal sounds, safe sounds, the sounds of a family surviving. 3 months later, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment, I just lay there in bed, listening. Rebecca's voice, bright and teasing. Marcus's lower rumble in response. The clink of mugs and plates. The mundane symphony of a Saturday morning. Normal. Finally, blessedly normal. I got up, pulled on my robe, and padded downstairs. They were at the kitchen table, Marcus reading something on his tablet, Rebecca flipping through a cookbook, both of them still in their pajamas. When they saw me, they smiled, and it reached their eyes. "Morning, Mom," Marcus said. "Coffee's fresh." "You're up early," I said, pouring myself a cup. "Couldn't sleep," Rebecca admitted. She looked nervous suddenly, her hands fidgeting with the cookbook pages. "Actually, we wanted to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. Even after 3 months, even with therapy and honest conversations and slow, careful rebuilding, part of me still waited for the other shoe to drop. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nothing bad," Marcus said quickly, reading my face. "Actually, it's good. We think it's good, anyway." Rebecca took a deep breath. "We want to renew our vows, have a real ceremony with our real names, with everyone who matters to us there. Start fresh." I stared at them. "You want to get married again?" "We want to do it right this time," Rebecca said. "No secrets, no lies, just us, promising to love each other in front of the people we care about. She looked at me, including you, especially you. Something warm and bright bloomed in my chest. When? 3 months from now. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. David will be there, obviously. And we were hoping— She paused, suddenly shy. We were hoping you'd stand with me. As my family, as my mother. The tears came before I could stop them. I'd be honored. Rebecca stood and wrapped me in a hug, and I held her tight, this woman who'd been a stranger and a liar and a daughter all at once. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me, for not giving up on us. That's what mothers do, I said into her hair. We don't give up. The doorbell rang at 10, and I opened it to find David standing there with a bakery box and a tentative smile. Brought bagels, he said. The good kind, from that place downtown. You're just in time, I said, pulling him inside. We're celebrating. Celebrating what? Your sister's getting married, again. David's face lit up. Really? When? 3 months, Rebecca said from the kitchen doorway. And you're walking me down the aisle, if you want to. Want to? David set down the bakery box and pulled her into a fierce hug. Are you kidding? I've been waiting 5 years to do that properly. We sat around the kitchen table eating bagels and talking about wedding plans, flowers and music and guest lists, and whether to do it in a church or outdoors. Normal family stuff. The kind of conversation I'd thought we'd never have after that night in the warehouse. But we were having it. We were here. We were healing. Has anyone heard from him? David asked quietly, and the table fell silent. We all knew who he meant. Sarah called last week, Rebecca said, her voice careful. The trial date is set for next month. He's pleading not guilty, obviously, claiming we framed him. Will you have to testify? I asked. Probably. Both of us. She looked at David. The prosecutor says with the wire recording and all the evidence Sarah gathered, it's an open and shut case. But they want us there to face him, to show we're not afraid anymore. Are you? Marcus asked gently. Afraid? Rebecca thought about it. Yes, but not the way I used to be. Before, I was afraid he'd destroy my life. Now I'm just afraid of having to see him again, having to hear his voice. She reached for Marcus's hand. But I'll do it. We'll do it, because he doesn't get to win. Not anymore. We'll be there with you, I said. Every step of it. Marcus and I will sit right behind you in that courtroom, and we won't let him hurt you again. I know, Rebecca said, and smiled. That's why I'm not as scared as I should be, because I'm not alone this time. 2 weeks later, I did something I'd been avoiding since that night. I went back to the warehouse. It was afternoon, sunny and warm, nothing like the cold darkness of that terrible evening. The building looked different in daylight, less menacing, more pathetic. Just an abandoned structure rotting at the edge of town. Sarah had offered to come with me, but I'd said no. This was something I needed to do alone. I walked to the exact spot where Robert had held that knife to Marcus's throat, where I'd picked up that piece of concrete and made a choice I'd never thought I was capable of making. The concrete was still there, kicked into a corner, dried blood still visible on its edge. I picked it up. It was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just been running on adrenaline that night, too scared and angry to feel its weight. I'd hit a man with this rock. I'd caused him to bleed. I'd been capable of violence when I'd spent my whole life believing I wasn't. Part of me wanted to feel guilty about that. Part of me thought I should feel ashamed. But I didn't. I felt powerful. Not in a dark way. Not in a way that made me want to hurt anyone else, but in a way that said I could protect the people I loved, that I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. I was 62 years old, and I'd discovered I was capable of things I'd never imagined. I set the concrete back down and walked out of that warehouse for the last time. The trial was everything I'd feared and nothing like I'd expected. Robert looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, his gray hair grown out and unkempt, his face thinner than I remembered. He sat between his public defenders with his hands cuffed, and when Rebecca and David walked into the courtroom to testify, he didn't look away. But he didn't smile either. didn't sneer, didn't make threats. He just looked tired. Rebecca took the stand first, her voice steady as she recounted everything, the messages, the break-in, the rose, the threats. The prosecutor played the wire recording, and I watched the jury's faces change as they heard Robert's confession, his cruel words, his admission that the evidence was manufactured. "And how did you feel," the prosecutor asked, "when your father held a knife to your husband's throat?" "Terrified," Rebecca said simply, "and sad. Because I realized in that moment that the man who was supposed to love me more than anything in the world hated me more than that. And that's a terrible thing to learn about your own father." I saw Robert flinch. David testified next, his voice not as steady as Rebecca's, but just as determined. He talked about the years of running, the fear of being found, the relief when Sarah told them they finally had enough evidence to stop hiding. "Do you feel safe now?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes," David said. "For the first time in 12 years, I feel safe, because he can't hurt us anymore, because we stopped running and faced him, and we won." The defense tried to argue that Robert had been entrapped, that Rebecca and David had set him up, that he'd been acting in self-defense when he pulled the knife. No one believed them. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Robert closed his eyes, and I saw his shoulders slump like something inside him had finally broken. The judge sentenced him to 25 years without possibility of parole. "Mr. Chen," the judge said, her voice hard as stone, "you had a chance to rehabilitate yourself after your first conviction. Instead, you spent your time in prison planning revenge against your own children, children who had the courage to stand up for what was right. You stalked them, threatened them, attempted to frame them for crimes they didn't commit, and ultimately tried to murder the man your daughter loves. This court finds your behavior reprehensible and your lack of remorse disturbing. I hope you use the next 25 years to reflect on the choices you made and the family you destroyed." Robert didn't say anything, didn't look at Rebecca or David, just let the guards lead him away, his shuffling footsteps echoing in the silent courtroom. Outside, on the courthouse steps, Rebecca collapsed into Marcus's arms and sobbed not from fear this time, but from relief so overwhelming it shook her entire body. David stood next to them, his hand on Rebecca's shoulder, and I stood beside David, and we were a family. Imperfect, complicated, scarred, but a family nonetheless. The wedding took place on a Saturday in June, in a small garden on the edge of town. Rebecca wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. Marcus wore a suit that made him look so much like his father, I had to blink back tears. David walked Rebecca down the aisle, both of them crying and smiling at the same time. The ceremony was short and perfect. They exchanged new rings and new vows, promises built on truth this time, instead of secrets. "I promise to trust you with my past," Rebecca said, her voice shaking but clear. "I promise to love you through it," Marcus replied. "I promise to never lie to you again. I promise to always believe you when you tell the truth. I promise to be brave enough to let you really know me. I promise to love every version of you, the ones I've already met and the ones I haven't discovered yet." When they kissed, everyone cheered, and I stood there with tears streaming down my face, thinking about how far we'd all come. From screams in the night to this, from broken trust to rebuilt promises, from fear to safety. At the reception, David gave a toast. "My sister and I spent 12 years running from our past," he said, raising his glass. "We changed our names, moved across the country, built walls around ourselves to stay safe. But what we learned, what Rebecca learned when she met Marcus, and what I learned watching them fight for their marriage, is that safety isn't about walls. It's about finding people who'll stand beside you when the walls come down, people who'll see the worst parts of you and love you anyway." He looked at me. "People like Linda, who hit our father with a rock when he threatened her son. People like Marcus, who chose truth over comfort and love over anger. That's what family is, not perfection. Not secrets, just people who refuse to give up on each other." Everyone raised their glasses, and I caught Rebecca's eye across the room. She mouthed, "Thank you," and I nodded because my throat was too tight to speak. Later, When the sun was setting and the string lights were glowing and Marcus and Rebecca were dancing to some slow song, David found me sitting at a table alone. "Can I join you?" he asked. "Of course." He sat, and for a moment we just watched the dancers. "I'm going to move here," he said suddenly. "To this town. I found a teaching position at the high school, starting in the fall. I want to be close to Rebecca, close to family." "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it. "I was also wondering," he hesitated. "You live in that big house with Marcus and Rebecca. Do you ever get lonely?" Because I was thinking, if you wanted company sometimes, I could rent the garage apartment, help with bills, keep you company. Only if you want, obviously. I don't want to. "Yes," I interrupted. "Yes, I'd like that very much." He smiled, relieved. "Yeah? Yeah. Your family, David. And family doesn't have to live separately just because that's what's expected." "Family," he repeated, like he was testing the word. "I like the sound of that." "Me too," I said. We sat there watching my son dance with his wife, his real wife now. No more secrets between them, and I thought about everything we'd survived to get here. The screams, the rows, the threats, the warehouse, the trial. And this moment, this family. "We did it," David said quietly. "We actually survived him." "No," I corrected gently. "You didn't just survive. You won. You built lives he couldn't destroy, love he couldn't touch, family he couldn't break. That's not survival. That's victory." He looked at me, and his eyes were shining with tears he didn't bother to hide. "Thank you," he said, "for being the kind of person who sees that, for being the kind of person who fights." "Thank you for letting me," I replied. The song changed. Marcus caught my eye and gestured for me to join them on the dance floor. I stood, brushed off my dress, and walked toward my family. Not the family I was born with, not the family I married into. The family I chose, the family that chose me back. And as Marcus spun me around and Rebecca laughed and David clapped along to the music, I realized something I'd been too scared to admit before. I was happy. Not in spite of everything we'd been through, but because of it. Because we'd faced the worst and come out stronger. Because we'd told the truth and survived it. Because we'd learned that family isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. 3 months later, epilogue. I framed the dried rose. Not because I wanted to remember the fear, but because I wanted to remember what we'd overcome. It hung in my bedroom now, pressed behind glass with a small plaque beneath it that Rebecca had insisted on adding, "Proof we survived." Some nights I still woke up to phantom screams. Some nights I still checked the locks twice. Some nights I dreamed about warehouses and knives and the weight of concrete in my hands. But most nights, I slept peacefully. Because downstairs, Marcus and Rebecca were safe in their bed. Because David was in the garage apartment, probably reading late into the night like he always did. Because we were together, and we were healing, and we were becoming something new. Not the family we used to be. Something better. Something built on truth and trust, and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. Rebecca had started using her real name at school now, Emily Marcus. A blend of who she was and who she'd become. Her students didn't know why their teacher had changed her name. They didn't need to. David was settling in, making friends, becoming part of the community. He'd even started dating someone, a librarian, who made him laugh and didn't press him about his past. Marcus had forgiven. Not easily, not overnight, but slowly, through therapy and honest conversations, and choosing love over anger every single day. And me? I discovered I was stronger than I ever knew, braver than I'd imagined, capable of protecting my family when it mattered most. I was 62 years old, and I was still learning who I could be. Still learning that family wasn't about blood or secrets or perfect histories. It was about showing up, about staying, about hitting criminals with rocks when they threatened your son, about refusing to give up, even when giving up would be easier, about love that survived the worst and came out stronger on the other side. I walked downstairs to make my morning coffee and found a note on the kitchen table in Rebecca's handwriting. "Mom, David and I are taking you out for breakfast at 10. No arguments, your family, and family celebrates Saturdays together. Love you, Emily. I smiled, poured my coffee, and sat at the table to wait. Family. Real family. The kind worth fighting for. The kind worth surviving for. And as the morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, I realized that screams and roses and nightmares had brought us here to this peaceful morning, this chosen family, this hard-won happiness. We'd walked through darkness together, and we'd found our way home.